So let's start off with some tips that I've learned over the years and discuss some of the specific tools you'll need. When contemplating using formalin-embalmed cadavers as a tool, one major concern that many will have is keeping their expensive and sensitive ultrasound equipment safe from contamination or damage from exposure to the cadavers and their associated chemical hazards, which is an excellent thing to be concerned about. These are very valid concerns, but they can be easily managed through the use of protective materials for the transducer. So we can look at a few examples of things you could use. Tegaderm films I find use really well because they're cheap. You can get, I recommend about the 4x8 size. You can get a 50 pack of those for about $30 US, and you can cut those in half. So you can get about 100 covers per box and use those to cover over the transducer like so. Now, when you do this, you want to make sure that you introduce some ultrasound gel between the transducer's footprint and the tegaderm itself, and try not to get any air bubbles in there. But then you can just go ahead and use this right on the donor and just peel it off when you're done and wipe it off, and everyone's good there. I've also, with some transducers, the probe markers are a little bit hard to see, or these little markers on the side that are supposed to mark the center line. So sometimes I'll put a little bit of lab tape in there to mark where the center line is, to make it easier for the medical students to see where the center line of the probe is when they're trying to align their needle with the transducer. There's also, of course, commercially available transducer covers, as I'm sure many of you are aware. There's the sterile kind, which are unnecessary with a cadaver. We're not really concerned about infection rates in our cadavers here. So they're a little more expensive, so I would probably not use those. There's also some non-sterile versions that you can buy in large quantities that are pretty cheap. And then also I found an interesting paper a couple of years ago where they showed that you can just do this with plastic wrap too. So if you're really having budget constraints, you can just get a roll of plastic wrap and cut that into squares and use that in the same way that you would a tegaderm or a probe cover with a rubber band.